Jason Kelce, the retired Eagles legend, Super Bowl champ, walking truth bomb. The guy who went from bulldozing defensive lines to bulldozing bad takes and broken systems with that same zero-filter energy. He's one of the most respected voices in football right now, not because he yells the loudest, but because when he speaks, people listen. And when he turned his sights on the Browns, let's just say Cleveland heard him loud and clear. Kelce didn't go off in a petty, hot take kind of way. No, this wasn't some clickbait rant for attention.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
It was calm, direct, surgical. He laid it all out: the dysfunction, the inconsistency, the desperate decisions, the quarterback mess, the culture rot, the fragile foundation that keeps cracking under pressure year after year. And the Browns? Well, they snapped. The owner, reportedly fuming, clapped back hard. The front office circled the wagons. PR damage control went into overdrive. Because Kelce didn't just ruffle feathers, he plucked the whole bird. But let's get real here. If what he said wasn't true, why did it sting so bad? Kelce basically held up a mirror, and the Browns didn't like the reflection. And honestly, can you blame them? This is a franchise that's been rebuilding longer than some players have been alive. A team that's gone through more quarterbacks than the rest of the AFC North combined. A team that's drafted top 5 over and over again, only to trip on its own shoelaces every single time it gets close to something resembling success. And yet, they always insist, this year is different. New quarterback, new coach, new system, new culture. Same collapse. Let's talk about that quarterback situation for a second, because it's the crown jewel in the Browns' Hall of Poor Decisions. Deshaun Watson. $250 million. Fully guaranteed. A deal so wild, so off-the-wall, unprecedented, that it turned the entire NFL sideways. And Cleveland didn't just pull the trigger, they celebrated it like they'd won the lottery. Except instead of cashing in, they bought a boat with a hole in it. And now they're stuck bailing water with a teaspoon. Watson hasn't delivered. Period. Whether it's injuries, rust, inconsistency, or the massive off-field cloud that follows him everywhere, it hasn't clicked. And when you've tied up that much money, that much faith, and that much reputation in one guy, you don't get to pivot, you just sit there and pray. But it's not just Watson. It's the entire infrastructure. Jason Kelce didn't say the Browns have bad players. He said the Browns are a bad operation. There's a difference. Because Cleveland has talent. Myles Garrett? A freak of nature. Nick Chubb, before the injury, was a top 3 back. Amari Cooper can still ball. The defense, on its best days, can punch with anybody. But talent means nothing without leadership. Without structure. Without vision. That's what Kelce was calling out. The rot above the roster. The people who make the calls, set the tone, hire and fire and draft and spin whatever excuse is trending this week. And let's not act like this is some new development. Cleveland's been chasing its own tail since it came back into the league in '99. 30-plus quarterbacks. Countless head coaches. 3 good years, maybe 4 in 2.5 decades. And through it all, the one consistent theme? They implode. From the inside. Whether it's players turning on coaches, owners meddling in decisions, or coordinators being thrown under the bus, this team can't get out of its own way. And when things go south, the spin cycle starts. This year is a learning year. We're building something special. Trust the process. We've heard it all. So has Jason Kelce. And now he's just not buying it. And that's the part that really sent the Browns spiraling, because Kelce has nothing to lose. He's not a rival GM. Not a bitter ex-player. He's not even an active competitor. He's a retired champion with a podcast, a platform, and zero patience for BS. And in less than 10 minutes, he took Cleveland's entire identity and ripped it apart. He questioned their decision-making, their ability to compete in a stacked division, their mental toughness, their internal culture. He even pointed out how Joe Flacco, a 39-year-old journeyman, was the most stable quarterback they had all season. Let that one marinate. Joe Flacco, who wasn't even on the roster for most of the year, somehow became the calm in the storm. That's not a compliment to him. It's an indictment of the Browns. And then there's the AFC North. Maybe the most cutthroat division in football. You've got the Ravens, who've mastered consistency. The Bengals, who built around Joe Burrow like a real organization. And the Steelers, who refuse to finish under .500 even when they're half asleep. In that environment, you don't get to wing it. You don't get to be the messy little sibling. You need direction, discipline, seriousness, Cleveland? Still out here treating the season like a TikTok trend. Fun one week, forgotten the next. And now the pressure is cooking. Because this isn't just about a bad take or a public call-out. This is a defining moment for the franchise. A chance to either wake up and finally address what's broken, or double down, get defensive, and watch the entire thing collapse again. And that's why Kelce's words matter so much. Because he didn't just criticize. He challenged. He forced the Browns to confront what everyone else has tiptoed around, that they are the architects of their own downfall. So now what do? Do they circle the wagons again? Pretend this is all media noise? Blame the injuries, the schedule, the refs, the weather? Or do they take a long, honest look at the mirror Jason Kelce just held up and say, you know what? He's right. And we're done being that team. Because the fans deserve better. The city deserves better. And honestly, so does the league. Cleveland isn't some hopeless pit of despair. It's a sleeping giant, one that, if run properly, could be a consistent contender for years. They've got the base. They've got the market. They've got the passion. But none of that matters if the people at the top keep fumbling the blueprint. Kelce's warning wasn't personal. It was practical. And if the Browns are smart, they'll treat it like what it was. A siren. A flare. A last-chance message from someone who's been there, and won. Because time is ticking. The division is getting stronger. The money's already spent. The fans are growing restless. And another year of almost won't cut it. So Cleveland, are you going to prove Jason Kelce wrong? Or are you going to do what you've always done, and prove him right? Alright, we've dragged the Browns through the mud long enough. Now it's your turn. Is Jason Kelce just being brutally honest, or did he cross the line? Is Cleveland finally ready to turn the corner, or are we watching the same story on a loop? Hit the comments and let it fly. Don't forget to like the video if you're here for the drama, and smash that subscribe button for more unfiltered takes on the biggest meltdowns, media blowups, and sports world chaos. Because this isn't just football, it's high-stakes reality TV, and the Browns are once again center stage. The only question left is, will this finally be the plot twist we've been waiting for? We've covered the initial explosion. Kelce drops a calm but devastating take. The Browns immediately combust like someone set off a smoke bomb in the owner's box. And the media cycle starts spinning like it's week 13 and everyone's tired of talking about the Chiefs again. But let's dig into the why. Why did this one comment hit like a punch to the ribs? Why are the Browns, of all teams, so sensitive to a bit of national criticism? Because Jason Kelce didn't say anything we haven't heard before. But it was who said it and how he said it that ripped the Band-Aid clean off. Kelce didn't foam at the mouth. He didn't pull some Stephen A. level performance or bang the table. No, he delivered his take like a man describing a bad restaurant experience. Calm, factual, deeply disappointed, but still rooting for you to figure it out eventually. He said the Browns aren't built for sustained success. That their issues go beyond the field. That their leadership doesn't know how to develop quarterbacks, manage the cap, or handle adversity without turning it into a full-blown meltdown. That's not an insult. That's an autopsy. And what makes it worse? He's right. Because even when the Browns manage to win, it doesn't feel stable. It doesn't feel replicable. It feels like someone's holding the whole thing together with hope and duct tape. A last-minute drive here, a lucky bounce there. And when the wheels inevitably fall off, the excuses come rushing out like confetti from a busted party cannon. It's never their fault. It's always injuries. Or the schedule. Or the weather. Or the refs. Or some nebulous learning curve that somehow never ends. And every time that narrative gets dusted off, the fans are supposed to just buy in again. It's exhausting. Jason Kelce isn't a troll. He's not here to antagonize for views. He's a guy who spent his career surrounded by actual accountability. He played under Andy Reid. He led a locker room in Philly that went through a backup QB, a shredded roster, and still won a Super Bowl. He knows what real leadership looks like. And he looked at Cleveland and said, that ain't it. Let's break that down. Because the Browns' dysfunction isn't about talent. They've had some of the most loaded rosters in the league. Top 5 draft picks out the wazoo. Pro bowlers, playmakers, defensive stars. They're not lacking personnel. They're lacking alignment. The front office says one thing. The coaching staff does another. The quarterback's saying something completely different. And the owner? He's somewhere in the background, pressing buttons like he's playing franchise mode in Madden. That's how you end up with this awkward, lopsided machine that looks powerful but drives like a grocery cart with a broken wheel. Kelce saw that and called it. He saw a team that keeps spending money like a contender but planning like a rookie. A franchise that wants instant success without putting in the boring behind-the-scenes work to actually build it. And then reacts with shock, when the team limps to another 8-9 finish and gets embarrassed by a division rival in prime time. Let's talk division because this is a huge part of the context. The Browns are not just trying to rebuild. They're trying to rebuild while surrounded by three of the most stable organizations in the entire league. The Ravens, built like a fortress, draft smart, run hard, lock down defense. Lamar Jackson playing chess on a different board. They don't panic, they adjust. The Bengals? Joe Burrow gave them an identity and the front office did what smart teams do. Protected him, supported him, and stayed out of their own way. The Steelers? Say what you want, but Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season since George W. Bush was in office. You could hand him a team of backup tight ends and long snappers and he'd still win 9 games. That's culture. Now take all that and drop the Browns in the middle of it. How are you going to compete in that environment without being rock solid? Answer, you can't. Not when your quarterback situation changes every 3 weeks. Not when your coaching staff seems to exist in constant purgatory. Not when your franchise's most consistent move is blaming the media when things go wrong. That's what Jason Kelce exposed. He didn't just point at the cracks in the wall, he kicked them open and said, "You're not fooling anyone anymore." And now the pressure is nuclear. Because the Browns can't just squeak out a winning season and call that progress. They can't just make the playoffs and bow out gracefully in the first round and pretend that's growth. Not after this. Not after they went DEFCON 1 over a podcast comment. They have to show they're different. Not on a stat sheet. Not in a press conference. On the field. Week after week. No excuses. Can they do it? Here's the thing, maybe. Yes, I know. That's not dramatic. But it's honest. Because if the Browns ever do get it together, if they ever manage to actually align the front office, the coaching staff, and the players, they could be a legitimate powerhouse. They've got the talent. Myles Garrett is a freak. The secondary is vicious when healthy. They've got weapons on offense. There's a foundation. But potential is worthless without structure. Promise means nothing without execution. And no amount of media spin can fix what bad leadership breaks. Jason Kelce told them the truth. And now Cleveland has 2 options. Option 1, get offended. Stay defensive. Run it back. Hope for better results without changing a thing. Maybe you scrape together a .500 season and tell everyone you're building something. Again. Option 2, shut up, listen, and evolve. Use the criticism as fuel. Not rage. Not ego. Fuel. Fix what's broken. Stop chasing headlines. Start building habits. Build the locker room from the inside out and stop pretending your past success was anything other than fleeting. Because if you don't, you'll prove Kelce right. Again. And the fans? They've seen enough déjà vu to last a lifetime. They don't want another gritty rebuild narrative. They want results. They want consistency. And more than anything, they want to stop being the joke. Because here's the secret nobody says out loud. NFL fans want Cleveland to win. They do. They really do. There's something beautiful about that underdog redemption arc. That tortured team finally rising from the ashes. That city getting what it's waited decades for. The dog pound roaring in January, not just September. But the Browns have to want it enough to change. And if they don't? If they keep doing what they've always done? Jason Kelce won't be the last person to say it. He'll just be the first to say it this clearly. You'd think after 25 years of almost, nearly, and painfully close moments, they'd be numb to criticism by now. Immune to the outside noise. Hardened to the hot takes. But apparently not. Because when Jason Kelce, an NFL warhorse who has nothing to gain and zero agendas, called them out, they didn't just bristle. They snapped. Like a sensitive uncle at Thanksgiving when someone brings up politics. And the best part? Kelce didn't even roast them. He just told the truth. Like someone pointing out your fly's been down all day, not because they hate you but because they care and they're trying to help. But Cleveland? They treated it like an attack. The front office reportedly scrambled to manage the narrative. The owner allegedly fumed behind closed doors. Local media either defended the honor of the franchise or doubled down and started citing stats from 2003. And the fans? Split right down the middle, half nodding along like Kelce read their group chat messages, the other half screaming, "Stay in your lane," like they haven't lived through this dysfunction every season since Friends was still airing new episodes. But let's stop and zoom out for a second. This isn't about a podcast clip. Or one dude's opinion. It's about a spotlight finally shining where the Browns have spent decades avoiding it, on their culture. See, most NFL franchises have a clear identity. You know what you're getting. The Patriots? Ruthless consistency and zero nonsense. The Chiefs? Flash, fun, and Mahomes magic. The Steelers? Defense, toughness, and weirdly competent backup quarterbacks. But the Browns? What are they? Seriously. What is the Cleveland Browns' identity? Because it's not grit. Not anymore. It's not discipline. Definitely not that. And it sure as hell isn't accountability, unless we're talking about how they always manage to blame someone else. Jason Kelce held up a mirror and said, "You don't know who you are. And that's why you lose." And instead of saying, "You know what? That stings, but maybe he's right," they yelled back, "Don't you know who we are?" Which is the problem. No one does. Because you can't keep cycling through quarterbacks, offensive schemes, defensive coordinators, head coaches, and front office regimes and still expect people to believe you're building something sustainable. You can't keep dumping draft capital into Band-Aid solutions and then act confused when the roster doesn't gel. You can't keep pointing to last year's highlights when this year's tape is telling a very different story. At some point you have to own it. Own the fact that your $230 million quarterback can't string together 3 healthy games. Own the fact that your elite roster keeps collapsing under pressure. Own the fact that Jason Kelce's take wasn't a hit piece, it was a diagnosis. And maybe, just maybe, you use that moment as the start of something real. But here's the scary part. There's a version of this story where nothing changes. Where the Browns brush it off, keep doing what they're doing, and walk straight into another season of high hopes and higher disappointment. You know the script. They come out hot in September. The national media flirts with the "Are the Browns for real?" headline. The locker room talks about blocking out the noise. The coach gives a post-game speech that goes viral on NFL Twitter. And then, like clockwork, Week 7 hits. An injury. A QB controversy. A questionable 4th down decision. A sideline blow-up. The cracks start showing. By Thanksgiving, they're 2 games behind in the division. The defense looks gassed. The offense is sputtering. The post-game quotes get shorter. The fans start doing that thing where they do the math on wildcard scenarios even though they know it's over. By week 17 it's just vibes. One last desperate push. Some meaningless win over a bad team that everyone treats like a sign of progress. And then, exit interviews. We'll get him next year. Rinse. Repeat. That's the cycle Kelce was talking about. He wasn't mocking Cleveland, he was begging them to break the loop. Because here's the thing about football. Nothing changes until you force it to. There's no reset button. No fairy godmother. No front office savior coming down from the rafters with a laminated playbook and a motivational speech. It has to start from the inside. The Browns have to want it more than the narrative. More than the quick fix headlines. More than the applause that comes after week 3 wins against teams that don't matter in December. And it's possible. We've seen it. The 2020 playoff win in Pittsburgh? That was real. That was earned. That was hope. But what followed? Regression. Excuses. Ego. And the kind of internal fragility that makes you think a podcast comment can derail your confidence. That's not championship behavior. That's insecurity in a jersey. Meanwhile, the rest of the division is lapping them. Baltimore's building dynasties. Cincinnati's reloaded and dangerous. Pittsburgh is literally incapable of losing more games than they win. And the Browns? Still trying to convince everyone they're in the conversation. Here's a secret. You don't have to say you're a contender when you are one. You just win. You show up in January. You stack consistent seasons. You keep your locker room intact. You don't flinch at criticism, you silence it with results. That's what the Ravens do. That's what the Bengals are learning. That's what the Steelers mastered decades ago. And Cleveland? They're still stuck in the phase where every critique feels like an attack and every slight becomes a story. It's time to grow up. Jason Kelce didn't curse this franchise. He didn't expose some secret. He just said the truth out loud, and the Browns reacted like someone had just kicked over the sacred statue. But there's a world where that truth becomes the turning point. The moment where Cleveland finally says, "You know what? He's right. We've been wasting time. Let's fix this for real." Not with a new ad campaign. Not with another flashy trade. Not with another culture reset. But with something way less exciting and way more important. Accountability. Maybe that's boring. Maybe it doesn't trend. But it wins. And if the Browns ever decide they're tired of being a meme and ready to be a menace, they'll stop clapping back at Jason Kelce and start proving him wrong. With wins. Jason Kelce didn't just poke the bear. He poked the bear, the zoo, the city council, and every overpaid executive hiding behind a glass door in Berea. And now that the dust has settled, and the outrage has cooled just enough for people to actually hear what was said, what's left? Truth. A hard, inconvenient, deeply uncomfortable truth that the Cleveland Browns need to hear on loop. Because the sad reality is, the Browns don't need more talent. They don't need a splashier signing or a shinier uniform combo, or another round of trust the process messaging from the front office. They need accountability. They need identity. They need to stop acting like they've been wronged and start admitting that they've done a lot of this to themselves. And the wildest part? It's fixable. Seriously. That's what makes this entire thing so frustrating to watch. The Browns aren't a hopeless case. They're not the Washington Commanders under Dan Snyder. They're not stuck in a perpetual tank mode. They've got stars. They've got a loyal fan base. They've got a team that could contend if they stopped self-destructing every time the pressure hits. And maybe Kelce's comment was the lightning strike they needed. Maybe it'll be the clip they play in the off-season hype video. That they didn't believe in us fuel. The moment that shook them out of their trance and forced someone, anyone, in the building to step up and say, enough. Or maybe it won't. Maybe it's just another soundbite in a long line of wake-up calls they keep pressing snooze on. But either way, the spotlight is on now. The league is watching. The fans are watching. And Jason Kelce, wherever he is, probably in a tank top, sipping a beer, laughing with his brother, is watching too. Because the ball is in Cleveland's court now. Not in the headlines. Not in the narrative. On the field. No more excuses. No more victim complex. No more clapping back at criticism instead of confronting it. Just football. Finally. So now it's your turn. Does Cleveland take the hit and bounce back stronger? Or do they crumble under the same weight they keep building for themselves? Hit the comments. Subscribe for more raw, unfiltered breakdowns of the beautiful disasters we call sports franchises. And like this video if you, too, are rooting for the Browns, not because they're perfect but because it's time they finally lived up to the story they keep trying to tell. Because at this point, it's not about what Jason Kelce said. It's about what Cleveland does next.